All right. Hey, good day, YouTube. Good morning. Welcome to Monday. Think I'm behind on already on the Monday. But how's everybody doing? Thanks for checking in. So let this get warmed up a little bit. Let some people roll in. Hope everybody had a good weekend. Made it here unscathed. We'll try to get a short chat in and see what's going on. We kind of beat the hurricane situation to death, so we're not going to cover that too deeply. Except to just check in on this dam breach vulnerability situation, which seems it's going to be popping up more and more the more storms we have, because it's just unsustainable infrastructure. It's funny because they do this hurricane and they don't put their normal weather map on the front. It's like all they have to talk about is this. Fortunately for me, the weather is pretty much clear here. It's the same every day, except when it's not. It's not very hard to predict the weather out here. You can pretty much see a storm coming over the mountains pretty quick. Like you get the cloud. The clouds let you know when the weather's coming a day or so out anyway. It doesn't really sneak up on us. So there's your tropical storm layout. But this dam situation, such as it is, I know they listed 3 of them last night. We didn't read into them too deeply. So levees threatened. So last night, Ashe County, which is the far, far northwesternmost county in the state, it's basically Virginia and Tennessee, reporting imminent failure of the headwaters dam of Creston. People downstream are being asked to evacuate. Less than an hour later, another emergency was reported at a levee in Landis, but they don't say where that's at. Is Landis also in Ashe County? Missing child. There was another couple dams they were talking about last night too, when they did the video. But lots of water, lots of flooding. There's flooding even though the Weather Channel can't go out into it. They got to stand in the ankle deep stuff and fake it. But there's lots of flooding going on. Just the news anchors aren't brave enough to get out into the real stuff. That's pretty apparent. You can see this is houses basically under a foot of water, first story water levels. This is Leland, North Carolina. All record rainfalls being reported. River flooding at record levels, on and on. But yeah, that dam breach is probably the most pressing that they were reporting last night. I don't know that it stopped raining. But there's others that are threatened. So if you're out there, stay away from the rivers. That's for sure. Fortunately, these are all really small dams that they've talked about so far. Obviously, bigger ones would be bigger impact. The small ones kind of have a limited reach, fortunately. Hey, good morning, Ann. How are you doing? Yep, we're just getting this Monday started. How's things? Yeah, if anybody wants to check in on Ann's channel, she does lots of news videos. I mean, she does lots of current event stuff and stuff that's going on. Go check her channel out. Tommy Boy's with us. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. You're watching Light Bright video? What? Hey, Black Cat, how you doing? Haven't seen you in a while. Good morning. How you doing? And Tommy Boy's the first one with a thumbs up. Right on. Or at least he says he was. It's always funny how way it looks on your end is always different on somebody else's end. Even when it stops raining, the water has to come back to the sea, right, Ann? Hey, eventually it all gets there again, right? All right, so there's tons of news about the hurricane, but definitely seems like more and more things are popping up. But just to give you the heads up, and that damn situation I wanted to check in on doesn't seem to have gotten any better, but this is less than an hour ago, so hopefully that's updated and see what continues to develop out of that part in particular. Moving on, favorite subject, the economic collapse. Zero Hedge had a article posted up 10 years after the crisis. They're doing the same thing and expecting different results. Well, the real question is, do they expect different results? Are they wanting the same results? But so they start off with the collapse of Lehman Brothers and the experience there of what they saw. So talking about the Lehman Brothers bankruptcy, September 14th, 2008. So this is written in retrospect to that day. So talking about Lehman Brothers filing bankruptcy the next day, the U.S. stock market tanked. And for most of the next several weeks, all global financial markets were a roller coaster of panic and chaos. Yeah. So this financial perspective, people were terrified of what was happening in the economy. The real estate market had dried up, stock market had crashed. Some of the most hallowed financial institutions in the world went bust in the blink of an eye. It's now been officially a decade, and the typical sentiment among economists, politicians, and central bankers is that the economy has come roaring back. Or not. There's certainly a lot of evidence to support this assertion. Several financial markets have hit all-time highs. Stocks, real estate, bonds, they're all generally selling for record high prices. And the question is why, right? There's lots of evidence, but why is that evidence there? Earlier this week, the Census Bureau announced the median household income in the land of the free had increased by 1.8% between 2016 and 2017. Governments around the world, from the U.S. to Europe, are seeing stronger tax revenue. Yeah, our government keeps getting record taxes collected quarter after quarter, but yet is in record debt and keeps spending more and more. They can't get enough. In the U.S., for example, GDP has increased from 14.8 trillion just prior to the Lehman collapse to 20.4 trillion today, increase of 38%. These are all good signs in that and if that's all you look at, it certainly seems like everything's all good. Hey, good morning, Barry Wood. Bug out Bubba. What's going on? Good morning. But remember that he's, quote, F. Scott Fitzgerald. So to quote him, the test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. So let's look at the other side of things, which we do all the time here. It's pretty much the only side of things we look at. Sure, financial markets have increased, wages have barely increased, economic output has increased, but what really increased? Debt. U.S. GDP is up 38% over the decade, but over the same period, the U.S. national debt has increased 122%. To translate, in other words, the U.S. national debt increased by more than $3 for every $1 increase in GDP. It's brilliant. I mean, it's a great scam. I mean, imagine for every $3, you're going to get at least, you'd hope, get at least $1 more in output, right? $50 worth of output, but that hasn't even happened. It's like a lot of the deadweight loss goes into government and dies in DC. Not just Uncle Sam, overall government debt across the world has tripled since Lehman's collapse to $63 trillion. And that doesn't count their unfunded liabilities. 40 trillion the US government owns taxpayers for Social Security, etc. So pointing out the hazard of the debt, all the different types of debt, student debt, consumer debt, auto debt, all at record levels, and corporate debt. And a lot of that new debt, by the way, is total garbage. As if it wasn't bad enough being garbage when it came out of the Federal Reserve, it's garbage even after the fact. There are insolvent money-losing companies that have no hope of paying back their debts that are able to borrow money at super low interest rates. That's what we've talked about incessantly here. Bond rates and interest rates are so low that it gives no incentive for the future, meaning that at some point in the future it will fall apart because you can't borrow cheap money forever. So what else has increased a lot in the last 10 years? Money. Literally the amount of money in the financial system is near an all-time high. After Lehman Brothers collapsed, the Federal Reserve and other central banks around the world created trillions of dollars out of thin air. And the process slashed interest rates. U.S. interest rates were basically at zero for nearly a decade. In Europe and Japan, everything turned negative. This is really interesting part because there are precisely the factors that contributed to the Lehman Brothers collapse. Like I say, the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over. And we're back here again, except on a larger scale, not just in the banking sector. In the italicized area. Hey, we're coffee. Oh. In 2000, there was a big recession. The stock market plunged and unemployment jumped. Then 9/11 happened and the economy sank even more. So central banks started printing tons of money and slashing interest rates in the early 2000s. As a result, housing prices went through the roof. Stock market soared, money was cheap and plentiful. And like I always like to kind of tell people, the stock market only soars because that's the only way people can see as a way to get their money back after these cheap interest rates and inflation. The only way they think they can keep up with inflation is to go into the stock market and try to get a higher percentage return. This is why it's not being saved in other parts of the economy. So that's why the stock market's just being used as a casino. It's not a real barometer of actual investment. It's just the fake one out there that people, well, one, they're forced into it. More money are forced into the stock market now with IRAs and 401ks, et cetera, than ever before. So you're getting artificial demand in the stock market by people being forced to participate. So that is what it is. Amount of debt soon followed: mortgage debt, corporate debt, credit card debt, and even new types of debt, which quickly became some of the most popular investments among financial institutions. And lots of this debt was total garbage, worthless. People with no hope of paying the loans were able to borrow money for nothing. There's a famous story of a homeless guy named Johnny Moon who was able to borrow hundreds of thousands of dollars back in the early 2000s to, quote, invest in real estate. I've never heard that. And to close it up here, it was totally ridiculous, yet almost everyone was convinced that the economy was strong and boom would last. It didn't. And 10 years ago, the collapse took all the experts by surprise. Or did it take them by surprise, or they just didn't tell anybody because they knew what was coming? Now, a decade later, the experts once again agree that it's all rainbows and buttercups. They believe they fixed the problem caused by too much bad debt by facilitating record levels of even worse debt. That's probably a very accurate statement that bears scrutiny. Just think about that in your brain. There was so much bad debt back then, but we fixed it by using all this bad debt. Even worse debt, as they say. They believe they fixed the problem caused by too much money in the system by injecting trillions of dollars of new money into the system. They believe they fixed the problem caused by artificially low interest rates by slashing interest rates to the lowest levels we've ever seen in all human history. They also seem to believe that this time will somehow be different. And as at the bottom it says, it seems a bit of what's the word insane to try the same thing over and over and expect different results. Unless it's a manipulated theft, because by artificially fixing rates and pumping all this cash, people that know how to manipulate the system can exchange worthless cash for real stuff and things and make out in the long run in there, at least hopefully. It's just a game of musical chairs where eventually there's no place to sit down. They just don't want to be the odd man out. All right, let's check in on the side chat. We'll move on to the next. Was looking in on Venezuela. We had talked about Chavez going to see his buddy over in China and try to work out a deal this weekend. And I was wondering if he had been deposed in his absence. I couldn't imagine a country having their leader leave in that condition and come back in one piece. But we'll see. But it looks like we got Bikes and Bullets with us. Good morning. Everybody talking about spending and debt, right? Yeah, car payments are debt sucker, aren't they? Bug up Bubba, debt is addictive. Been dry for 8 years now. That's excellent. If we all could aspire to such goals. Yes, free and clear should be the goal of everybody. Yeah, not just prepper, homesteader, everybody. But everybody should be a prepper too. So I guess it all works around itself in the end. Yeah, if you're free of debt and have 3 days of supplies stocked up, you're definitely a threat. Hey, no worries, Bikes. It was a good chat last night, though. But I just wanted to catch up, and I redrew the for the contest giveaway for the giveaway. I had to redraw it. You have to go watch. I think I did the draw at about the 20-minute mark, somewhere in there. You have to go watch it, Bikes. It was quite foretelling. It was downright scary. You go check out the draw at least if you get a chance. It was Tommy Boy can tell you all about it. Scary stuff on the chats these days. So Venezuela went to go get a deal with China to try to get some of their debt taken care of. Speaking of debt and some of their issues, there's also a lot of articles out there about Venezuela selling record amounts of gold to try to resolve their debt. So in this case here, they're signing over at least 7 oil fields to little-known companies that will be paid to boost output through contracts similar to the ones rolled back under late leader Hugo Chavez. So they're actually trying to undo some of the damage, it sounds like. So, cool. Don't put the oil fields in the hands of the mega corporations. That makes sense. But trying to get some money back from the process where they nationalized they took all the oil fields from the corporations and tried to nationalize it. And that didn't work out so well for them. So they had been having exceedingly declining oil output. So they're willing to reverse the aggressive efforts of his predecessor to expand the state's role in the energy industry of the OPEC nation. Wow, they're they're actually going to wake up out of their stupid communist dream before it's too late. Is it really possible? So the plan faces significant hurdles because most companies involved have no known experience operating oil fields. Okay, never mind. I tried to give them a chance, but it doesn't sound like they're going to be able to figure it out. U.S. sanctions would likely inhibit more experienced firms from getting involved with Venezuela's state-run PDVSA. I don't know, petroleum distillate. I don't know. Something to do with their oil fields, probably. Government, they have 5-letter agencies. See, when you go on socialism, you don't have 3-letter agencies anymore. You go to 5-letter agencies. I guess that's the way it works. They had announced a vague plan to boost oil output with the help of 7 companies. During a televised event August 28th, representatives of those companies during a ceremony, including Maduro, signed a joint service agreement. But if they don't know what they're doing, what good does it do? That's the hard part there, buddy. So the draft was a basis for contracts announced by Maduro, said 2 sources familiar with the situation who asked not to be identified because they didn't want to end up dead on the street, probably. But it says here they're not allowed to speak publicly about the issue. Reuters was not able to attain finalized contracts, so it might just be smoke and mirrors. That's probably the more likely scenario here. The companies involved nor the government agency responded. The overall plan would involve $430 million in investment and a production increase of 641,000 barrels per day. That's like huge. Yeah, if they could do that, they might have a shot. The deals involve oil fields that included 2 that were operated by Italy and France's companies here, Eni and Total, I would imagine. So the companies that signed agreements include 5 Venezuelan firms, and they're listed there. One's got a strangely Russian-sounding name, Petrocarina, but it's got the little squiggly over it like in Spanish. But it looks awfully Russian when you read it like that. And on and on. Most of them appear to be involved in oil services, but have no evident experience operating fields, which tends to require significantly more capital, human resources, and certifications. Anybody that's qualified to operate an oil field, I would think, would have left the country by now if they weren't currently running an oil field. The places, you would figure the people that are capable have absolutely left the country. The only people left are those that are able to manipulate people to get their way, the dishonest and the shysters. Might be about all that's left. I don't know if there's anybody that's still around running an honest organization anymore, except for maybe your shopkeepers who don't have any choice in their current status. And the farmers just out there farming, just like, what's going on? It'd been interesting to see what the farming is like out there, if they're getting raids on their farms, stuff like that. People stealing their crops and animals from the fields. Just a little bit on the details of the contracts, but it's all word of mouth. Not really that important. So the last paragraph, despite a 10-year oil boom that left the PDVSA flush with cash, output at those oil fields steadily declined as the company diverted necessary investments into social programs that kept Chavez popular. Boy, that sounds familiar. The 2014 collapse of oil prices ushered in the economic crisis. Was there really a collapse? I mean, I guess they edged down. I mean, we went down to close to $60, but goodness, I don't know that that was a collapse. I guess we were down at 55 at one point for which would be the bottom of that, but it ain't like it went down to 45 or anything. But when you're diverting your cash to programs that don't that have dead weight, that's what happens. The money's just gone. And like it says here, after that crash, leaving oil engineers and oil field workers alike rushing to leave the country. Exactly. Everybody capable left. Just like Atlas Shrugged, but just a little bit different. All right. And so and also checking in on their actual visit to China. This is from yesterday. I was searching to see if Maduro even made it back to Venezuela yet, alive or unarrested, but I have seen no evidence of anything like that. I'm sure China might be trying to guarantee his safety in some point, free travel and all that other stuff. They might have somebody holding down the, presidential palace and everything in Venezuela while he's gone, maybe. Who knows what assets China has in there now. If they got this meeting going, you figure they're pretty deep in there now. So it just starts off, China supports Venezuela's efforts in developing economy and improving people's livelihood and is willing to provide aid to Venezuela with its ability, said Chinese Premier Li Qiang. That's from Friday. Bilateral relations. This is like the shortest article ever. Chinese are short and to the point. I guess you give them that. Venezuela has mapped out a national economic recovery and growth plan and welcomes Chinese companies to actively participate in part in Venezuela's economic development, Maduro said, adding that Venezuela stands ready to further forge ahead all around cooperation with China. So yeah, we've been hypothesizing for months about who was going to get their stamp on Venezuela and manipulate the future, whether it was the U.S. trying to get in there, or if Russia and China would beat them to the punch, because we've had lots of Russia and Chinese activity in South America for a long time. And this is about the equivalent of the U.S. being in South Korea in proximity and strategic location-wise. China being in Venezuela is right in our back door a long time, ever since, you go back to all the incursions at the turn of the 19th century, all the activity the Americas had in South America. Venezuela's always been a big part of a lot of that. So it looks like China is doing the same here. Look and see what's going on here. Side chat, see what everybody's talking about. And it says, surprised we don't have another housing bubble ready to burst. I think we've written really close. The housing prices that are out here, Ann, are, I would have to say, certifiably insane. I don't know how people, it goes back to everybody's working in both dual income families, all that other stuff. And it is the definition of insanity. It's got to be close. I mean, interest rates are terribly low, but people are still able to buy. But if that interest rate ticks up even a little bit, housing is going to fall apart shortly, I think. I mean, California's driving a lot of our stuff, so that's kind of hard. We're a bad gauge too. But Vegas, they just reported, has like the fastest growing housing market in the country again, which is always a bad sign. Everybody's retiring to live the good life in Vegas, I guess. Bug Out Bubba says, ask a retirement specialist which is more important, getting out of debt or investing in a 401k. If they say a 401k, go elsewhere. Yeah, Bug Out Bubba, good luck finding a retirement specialist that recommends that. They all get their, most of them get their, what do you call it? Not an incentive, but it's not really a kickback, but they do get their, they get their finder's fee or whatever for selling 401ks and insurance for that matter. They tend to wrap insurance into just about anything that you get nowadays for stuff like that. Yeah, you missed the drawing, Ann. It's all right. It was just the last one. I'd done the early one or last month, but I had to close it up. On down the side chat. Tommy Boy's got 6 turkeys roaming through the yard. That's good stuff. The Irish USMC vet did a video the other day of turkeys in his area. Yeah, bikes. You're in the epicenter of the housing, and once again, right? You're gonna sell now and buy next year. You think it'll collapse once again next year? You think, or unravel, as you say? Oh, bikes up here, we've well exceeded 2,000 highs. We're things here got to be a good 20% higher than 07, 08. It's insane. And how quickly we got here is probably more insane. And you got wild turkeys in the city. Is that right? You don't see that every day. Well, that's what I had pulled up for today. Anybody got anything else? Quick snippets or anything that may be more interesting than what's on Drudge? Turkey's been kind of quiet since their little debacle last month. Doesn't seem to be a lot in the news about South Africa. You can see reports of attacks and stuff on Twitter, but that's staying out of the headlines as well, at least on our end. I didn't do a search for South Africa this morning, but things are devolving very quickly there. I wouldn't. It's not been covered well anyway from the Western perspective, except for anecdotal Australian articles because of the asylum requests or whatnot that were getting turned down and rejected. But I don't know. Let me look and see if South Africa's got anything. I know they had kind of floated the gun confiscation thing out there last, and they realized that. I mean, talk about dumb communists. They were pushing land confiscation. They had to back up and realize they forgot the first step of gun confiscation. Yeah, nothing really new on the land front in South Africa. Oh yeah, Ebola, and yeah, the Ebola outbreak that was going on in Congo. Um, don't know that they. I know it didn't die down overnight, but it has been quiet, hasn't it? When we had that, we talked about those planes flying into Europe and the U.S. last week with sick travelers from Mecca, and we also you did a good report on that Nigerian officer who was in the Great Britain sick, and that was questionable circumstances of how they let all that stuff fly by the radar. Then you got Ebola with nobody necessarily screening well. Um, all the gun confiscation stories out of South Africa from last month. Let's check on Ebola. Ebola, Ebola, Ebola. Some stuff from this weekend or Friday. Uh, Here, I guess we'll go with out of the Nigeria Post. This be an update 20 hours ago. Death tolls over 90. 92 die in fresh Ebola outbreak. This is Business Post, Nigeria. That's some rough looking duty right there. Imagine working in the midst of African jungle dressed like that. That's not going to be comfortable. Drink water. 137 possible cases have been confirmed by the WHO. Latest outbreak in eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo. UNICEF has dispatched 11 specialists. So this is an Ebola outbreak. You have a highly infectious disease tearing apart the country, and UNICEF has dispatched a team of 11 specialists in community communication, education, and psychosocial assistance, as well as water, sanitation, and hygiene. And nothing like sending a community organizer to do a doctor's and a nurse's job. I guess hygiene is important to a certain degree, but there's got to be infection control type people. Agencies also working with anthropologists specializing in local culture beliefs and practices to help overcome possible concerns. I thought they've been working on this for decades on that front, where people, the way they bury their dead and stuff, was one of the ways that it was getting spread so quickly. 1,750 people are under active surveillance, according to the WHO. 52 vaccination rings have been set up around known Ebola patients. That'll be interesting to see how that works out. More than 8,900 people have been vaccinated, including 2,000 children. So it's a short article. Treating the sick and protecting people who have come into contact with them is complicated because the vast Kivus area, which is, I guess, is that eastern part of the Congo, is home to more than 100 armed groups. Can't we just say armed individuals and put it in the thousands? Why just use 100? Why not just put in a big number? I mean, how would they do it if it was we got a smallpox outbreak in the South. South Georgia has a smallpox outbreak, but it's difficult because it's home to more than 20,000 gun owners. I wonder how else they were going to say it. Yeah, so nothing about sending actual treatment people, or what do they call those people that disease investigation people? That they're going to send community communication, education, and psychosocial assistance people, the baby huggers, touchy-feely people to go help everybody through the Ebola outbreak. I guess that's a bold strategy, Cotton. See how that works out for you. So interesting on that front. I don't know if we're going to see any progress on minimizing that. They're probably going to claim victory at some point with this new vaccine and try to propagate that throughout the country. To what detriment, we don't know yet. So I have to check in on that later. Hey, Walter, good morning. Stan Ulch is with us. Stan says, gotta love the Canadian government gun registry program. So backlogged they can't even answer the phone. Is that right? It's like California when they were having these new restrictions put in place where you had to register, and the guy called to see what he had to do to register, and then they came and arrested him. Don't register jack. It's just a scheme to get you to entrap yourself. Hey, Midwest Prepper was in with us for a minute. Good morning. Yeah, Midwest, we talked about those 4 planes last week and did a really good video on that, especially the British side of it. Go check out her video, kind of ask those hard questions, especially the Nigerian military officer, whatever he was. Like, how did he get on the plane and why? You thought it only took one specialist, Stan? Is that what you're saying? Saluting in PPE. So that's that update. That is from yesterday. Africa Times reports that the DRC sees improvement, but Ebola risk remains. Obviously, as long as it remains in the environment, the risk is always going to be there. It's just like, literally, we have the plague setting up here in the Sierra Nevadas and different squirrels and rodents and such, but we don't have plague outbreaks very often, just because of human interaction. They have, one of the biggest challenges there in Africa is the way they cook and eat their, what they call bushmeat, is one of the main interactions they have with the Ebola. If we had more people going to the mountains to catch and kill squirrels, we might have more plague here. You never know. But most people just look at the squirrels from a distance and don't try to capture and eat them. So that's, think about it in the SHTF perspective. People start going hungry. They start trying to get in the mountains to get more game and food. Could have higher plague outbreaks around here just because of that interaction, increase in interaction. Something to consider. no matter where you are, whatever disease the local animals carry that isn't currently spreading because humans don't go into nature nearly as much as we used to, those diseases could kick off and spread quite quickly. Increased, you hear everybody talking about when the SHTF hits, I'm going to go, hunt. Well, that's what they're really going to try to do. There's a lot of animals that have a lot of diseases that we're not used to getting back into the population. Just a thought on not only will the SHTF bring tough times, but it could bring in increased diseases because of just that one factor alone, a little less all the other ones. So it could be the plague, could be the Rocky Mountain spotted fever because more people are getting, tick bites and stuff like that. Any number of things. The what do they call it? The chikungunya or whatever that's prevalent down in the South. That came up from from Central America and whatnot. The West Nile, all those things will have increases as people get outdoors more to work because they have to work harder to sustain what they got going on or to find food. Interesting thoughts for this Monday morning. Hey, V-Borg, good morning. What's going on? How you doing? Bikes has a unique perspective on squirrels, it looks like. Yeah, but when that squirrel carries the plague, though, it can put you in harm's way. Tommy boy, you're the one living large. You don't have to work today, tomorrow, or the next day. Right on. All right. Well, speaking of work, I'm going to have to go get some work done. So I'm going to have to jet out of here. But thanks for checking in, people. Thanks for hanging out on a Monday morning. Check out the links in the description box. Bug Out Bubba says 3 weeks after a serious HHTF and all easily obtainable game will be gone. Potentially, depending on which location you're talking about. But people are going to go further and further out potentially. But again, it's just talking about the disease component. There's going to be a lot more disease spread because of that. People trying to go out there and get that game. Because either one, they do get it or they get the side effects of trying to go get it, just being exposed to mosquitoes and things that are unchecked. That normally in civilized societies we are now, governments put a lot of effort into mosquito spray. Just think of Florida alone. If everybody been to Florida, I mean, they spray for mosquitoes a couple times a week sometimes, depending on where you're at. And that mitigates some of the different disease spread. But if that goes away, as things collapse, as things degrade and governments prioritize, what they're going to do, the more and more diseases spread because of that. Just that fact alone, you can go on down the list. Varmint control, dog catcher, rabies. There's tons of diseases that could become much more prevalent in the collapse scenario. That would definitely cull the herd, if you will, or at least make everybody sick. if not fatalities, definitely make life miserable for a lot of us, minimizing our effectiveness. And Alicia Clegg checks in at the last minute. Just woke up. What? Thought you were an early morning person, Alicia. What's up with that? All right, folks, we're going to check out. Have a good day. We'll see you later. Live free.